offered up as a sacrifice to the most feared monster in the world, a forced marriage that everyone believed would be his ultimate end. Abandoned by his own family in the claws of the tyrant dragon, he mastered forbidden magic to exact revenge on everyone. Yet at the peak of power, he discovered his bride's true sacrifice. Turning back time through a supreme spell, he gets another chance. Our guy makes the insane decision to actually marry the dragon. Now the outcast mortal will rule alongside the most powerful beast, dominating the realm as the legendary creature's consort. The story starts right away with an announcement that our main character's engagement to Archduchess Valdrova has been set, and the family patriarch makes sure to remind him that he better know the true weight behind his command, putting young Ferderoznova right in front of a destiny that feels way more like a death trap. Especially since for any noble, hearing news like that was pretty much the same as signing their own death warrant. The kid basically had only two choices in life: reject a marriage and get thrown out onto the streets with nothing, or accept the deal and end up getting ripped to shreds by the monster waiting for him, even though all he ever truly wanted was to be accepted by his own family. Ever since he was little, our boy pushed himself far beyond the limits of his own body, carrying the heavy burden of being just a sickly third illegitimate son of that proud knight bloodline, enduring the constant mocking from the servants who claimed all that training was a pure waste of time due to his lack of talent. And even without a single soul by his side to give him support, he just kept swallowing his tears and pushing forward. Day in and day out, the young man kept swinging his sword without resting for even a single second, holding on to the faint hope that one day he would finally earn his father's recognition. But that illusion started crumbling down when a nasty rumor began spreading all across the mansion, bringing his arrogant brother over just to laugh in his face for even trying to train like a knight, shoving our main character straight to the ground and telling him he never had a right to anything, cursing the poor kid as a filthy blue-eyed bastard with all the pure disgust in the world. The kid just wanted to be part of the family, but as he glanced up toward the mansion window, he saw his own father turning his back with complete cold indifference to his son's suffering, feeling the painful certainty that those cold eyes had abandoned him a very long time ago. Facing so much contempt, the young man builds up his courage and tells the head of the house that he is leaving for good, receiving nothing more than a simple and chilling consent that showed zero affection whatsoever, getting kicked out with the heavy iron gates slamming shut right behind his back. While hearing that from that exact moment on, he was no longer considered a Roznova, even though he knew how hard he had worked to prove his worth to everyone. His trembling, calloused hands were living proof of years of pure dedication tossed straight into the trash, turning all that overwhelming sadness into burning hatred, swearing absolute revenge against his own father, promising to make that man bitterly regret throwing him away like garbage. And it was on that exact, gloomy day that our boy took his very first step toward becoming a mage. He ended up awakening to magic at 18 years old, which was already considered way too late, instantly becoming the laughingstock of the academy for falling far behind all the other rookies, with the whole class saying it would take him decades just to grasp the basics of internal power. But Ferda did not give a single damn about normal theories when a bizarre and wicked power began overflowing from within him, forming a crimson circle fueled purely and exclusively by his deep-seated hatred and resentment, triggering an insane explosion that swept across the entire area and shut everyone up for good, discovering that the more hatred he felt, the stronger he became, reaching the sixth circle in the blink of an eye, until the perfect moment finally came to pay a little return visit to his old Roznova family estate. Our protagonist kicked off his payback by making the servants who used to humiliate him tear each other apart, then threw his own brothers into a twisted spiral of jealousy until they completely destroyed one another, leaving only his defeated and bloodied father begging on his knees for the nightmare to finally end, while Ferda held the old man by the head, forcing him to witness the total ruin of the family he cherished so much, completely breaking the patriarch's spirit for good by making him watch that pure hell inside his own home, wiping the proud name of the Roznovas off the map forever. Yet even with all that utter destruction, the empty void inside his chest still felt like it was burning non-stop, drawing the attention of legendary warriors and powerful figures across the continent who tried to take him down, branding the young man as an out-of-control monster and the true public enemy of the entire kingdom. But our boy survived through it all and reached the peak of humanity by achieving the 8th circle, turning into a legendary archmage who still secretly feared the day someone would come looking for revenge against him. To make sure no one could ever crush him, he needed to transcend and reach the 9th circle of the realm of demigods, discovering inside ancient tomes what the single essential ingredient was to complete this ultimate magical ascension. with a crazy twist of fate playing out right before his very eyes. Since the heart he needed belonged to none other than the feared red dragon, Archduchess Valdrova herself, driving the mage to march straight to the peak of the sacred mountain to finally close this loop from his past. Watching as the creature who was once supposed to be his bride was now lying there bleeding out at his feet, with the great beast feeling shocked to realize that her former suitor had come in person just to take her life, our boy grits his teeth from the heavy toll of battle, spitting blood and breathing heavily, telling the beast to hurry up and die by his hands to pay for all the agonizing suffering she caused. While the red dragon simply listens to his furious accusations and calmly asks the reason behind so much hatred, explaining that she had never even set foot in the human realm or left that isolated mountain peak since before he was born, leaving our boy completely unhinged upon hearing the beast claim she had zero blame in any of it, screaming that her ridiculous obsession with finding a groom was the exact reason he got thrown out of his own home. And hearing the creature naively ask if it was really all her fault, the mage yells out, confirming it without a second thought, stating that the absurd idea of a monster looking for a human partner completely ruined his entire existence. The dragon seems to grasp the sheer weight of the situation and pulls back her massive claw in subtle shock, making the young man suspicious for a split second by that sudden and unusual reaction, but brushing it off right after to seize the opening and gather all his remaining mana, preparing his finishing strike while the mysterious creature quietly states that she finally understands the truth, thrusting one of her massive claws forward with shocking speed, forcing the mage to hastily raise his defensive circle to avoid getting completely crushed by the impact, feeling his barrier crack as warm splashes of blood stain his vision, only to end up totally stunned when he realizes the dragon had just ripped open her own chest with her claws. The kid drops to his knees, unable to comprehend anything about that act of pure madness, while the beast asks in a fading voice if his magic truly required a dragon heart, causing our protagonist to panic, thinking she was about to destroy the organ just to deny him the win, since that was his one and only final shot at reaching the coveted ninth circle, shouting in pure rage for her to stop immediately before ruining his entire plan, blasting her with a bolt of black lightning magic, making the monster collapse from the heavy impact that dealt unbearable pain, crashing her colossal body against the frozen mountain ground during her final breaths. And even then, she finishes tearing open her own chest to pull out her heart, leaving the mage utterly speechless at the sheer level of insanity unfolding right in front of him, staring at the glowing dragon core pulsing with incredible life right before him, and hearing the creature willingly offer her own heart for him to take without hesitation. The young man is totally lost, unable to understand the reasoning behind such immense kindness, asking why she didn't just kill him in battle instead of choosing to take her own life. Hearing Valdrova confess that she made that choice because her very existence had brought him so much misery, revealing through her ancient memories that she had always hated herself for all eternity, despising the violent blood flowing through her veins and the uncontrollable urge to destroy everything for no reason, constantly fighting against her own savage nature that spread nothing but absolute terror wherever she went, suffering in silence with the bitter tears of a monster who never asked to be born like that. Watching people flee in utter panic whenever her presence drew near any city, knowing that her mere existence struck terror into everyone and that death would resolve everything, even though deep down in her chest she still harbored the foolish wish to experience a single moment of happiness before the end, regretting the harsh consequences that her naive dream ended up bringing upon so many innocent lives, and wishing with the last of her strength that the young man could at least find peace through her sacrifice. The remaining life inside the Guardian's massive body begins to fade away into the darkness, leaving Ferda clutching his own chest with a strange and bitter feeling he had never experienced before, completely puzzled as to why that revenge left such a foul taste in his mouth, cursing the creature in his mind for trying to mess with his head up until her final breath, and trying to convince himself to focus purely on the ultimate goal of unlocking the legendary ninth circle, raising the dragon essence with both hands as arcane lightning begins drawing in that pure energy, watching the very first drop of celestial power fuse directly into his power-hungry soul, screaming out through the transformation that would surpass all of humanity to be reborn as a demigod, unleashing a massive beam of light that tears through the sky and violently shakes the entire mountain. But suddenly, our protagonist finds himself floating in the middle of a shapeless, dark void, confused by the total lack of pain and the fact that he consumed the heart without feeling the godlike authority he expected, sinking down as if falling into a bottomless swamp surrounded by a grand, majestic presence, staring at the lonely silhouette of Valdrova herself holding ancient secrets inside her consciousness, getting completely overwhelmed by a crushing wave of pure emotions that did not belong to him, taking the direct impact of the dragon's soul, striking right through his mind like a lightning bolt, collapsing on the spiritual plane, unable to handle the raw truth revealed before his eyes, and finally seeing everything with the deepest clarity in his new state of mind. He witnessed an ancient millenary despair so colossal that it made all of his human hatred look utterly insignificant, accompanied by a gentle loneliness that only ever wished to hold the world with warmth until the end of time, making the young man break down in tears upon realizing the absolute monstrosity he had just committed, wondering what he had really been chasing after so desperately his entire life, whether it was becoming the supreme archmage, satisfying his revenge, or ascending to the glory of a demigod, only to immediately admit to himself that his one true desire was simply to build a warm and cozy home, living peacefully beside cherished loved ones, without any need for war or power struggles. Looking at the memories of his past self with a completely broken heart, he realizes that Thaldrova shared the exact same silent dream of finding genuine affection, but grieves with a heavy ache in his chest, knowing that it was far too late for any of it, since the woman lay lifeless on the cold stone floor by his very own greedy hands, making any achievement of immense power completely hollow in the face of the irreparable tragedy he caused. However, there remained one single legendary spell that only a mage of the Ninth Circle could ever cast, activating the wish spell in a desperate attempt to fix the unforgivable mistake he committed in the past, until his vision suddenly clears up as he hears a familiar voice calling out his name, revealing the young man back inside the brightly lit office facing the man who was once his father, with the noble Arambalt Rosenova arrogantly complaining about him spacing out during their conversation, making the young man realize that he had returned to the exact day his fate was sealed, as the old man repeats the exact words that the engagement with Archduchess Valdrova had been finalized, expecting his weak and despised third son to completely panic over that death sentence, while threatening to banish him from the family if he dared to refuse the house order. But this time our protagonist takes a firm step forward with the unshakable conviction of a second chance, calmly replying that he understands the situation and leaving the patriarch completely stunned, determined not to run from his fate and eager to view this engagement through entirely different eyes, declaring with absolute resolve that he formally accepts the engagement with the Archduchess. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the second son, Hukan Rosnova, is totally shocked to learn his brother accepted the engagement, finding it utterly ridiculous that the loser didn't beg for his life instead of willingly marching to his death, and hearing from the butler that the kid dismissed the servants to stay alone in his room, he lets out a smug smirk, deciding to pay him a little visit to laugh at the poor fool's desperate face before his departure. Inside, our protagonist hears the rushed footsteps of someone barging over without any hesitation, watching the door swing wide open as his arrogant brother barges in yelling to mock him, only for the arrogant noble to freeze instantly with a totally dumbfounded look on his face, because instead of finding the boy crying on the floor in pure despair like he expected, he sees Ferda looking sharp and composed, calmly complaining about his complete lack of manners for entering without knocking, explaining that he sent the servants away because he needs to get used to taking care of himself from now on. Hukin finds that attitude completely bizarre and asks sarcastically if he even grasps the weight of this engagement, hearing the young man answer bluntly that it is just a polite way of kicking him out of the family, making the brother laugh at his ignorance while warning him that the dragon's suitor is going straight into an early grave, to which Ferda simply lowers his head, stating in a calm voice that he knows the entire story perfectly well. In the past, the very first suitor sent to the beast was the third prince of the empire, a brilliant, handsome young man adored by everyone who gave up his claim to the throne just to apply, but only one day after arriving in the territory of the Red Dragon, that saintly-looking noble with shady hidden intentions got thoroughly exposed, getting beaten into an unrecognizable bloody pulp by the Guardian. Hukin points his finger asking how weak trash like him expects to survive where even a prince failed, shrugging right after since he has no real reason to stop an idiot from walking straight into the monster's fangs, it grabbing our protagonist by the collar to threaten him with decapitation if he even thinks about running away from the deal. But Ferda remains completely unbothered, telling his brother to learn how to control his own basic impulses, throwing it right in his face that everyone in the mansion already knows about the disgusting looks he gives their older brother's wife, leaving the guy absolutely livid with rage, needing the servants to hold him back from throwing punches, while Ferda mocks him by saying his face is far too valuable now to be taking punches before saying goodbye. The young man then picks up his luggage and calmly walks toward the carriage waiting for him outside, meeting the old butler who wipes fake tears into a handkerchief with the most dramatic act ever, claiming with a choked-up voice that it was an indescribable honor to have served the young master all these years. even though our boy knows damn well that it is pure hypocrisy from the very man who used to slip poison into his meals. When he was little, the boy believed he was constantly sick just because of his weak and frail body, only to find out years later that even the household servants were plotting against him and deserved to be strangled. But holding back his urge to kill, resting his hands on the old man's shoulders to thank him for his hard work, giving a chilly smile that leaves the butler frozen in pure fear, without understanding the underlying tone, asking him to take good care of the estate before the carriage begins rolling away from the mansion. Settling comfortably into his seat during the ride, Furtive feels a deep inner peace he had never experienced in his life. Looking out at the green landscape through the window and noticing how much calmer everything seems without the old resentment. Realizing that the burning thirst for vengeance that once consumed his chest had completely vanished. The dark magic he wielded during his first life worked exactly like an addictive drug, starting out pleasurable with the rush of power until turning into an uncontrollable monster as his tolerance grew, making madness feel like a thrilling wave of euphoria every single time. Hatred took full control of his being, all the way to the tragic climax of that golden heart pulsing inside the dark void, bringing back the painful memory of the sacrifice that permanently scarred his soul, and renewing his absolute resolve that he never wants to live in such an inhuman way ever again. Taking in the gentle breeze to savor a moment of true tranquility for the first time in ages, he even thinks he might not need to awaken as a mage anymore, until the carriage driver yells out that they have arrived, stopping right before the sign strictly prohibiting anyone from entering the Duke's territory, leaving our boy sitting on top of his luggage in the middle of nowhere, with nowhere to run, while the cowardly driver speeds away at full throttle, terrified at the thought of seeing a monster. Furtive thinks it is great to be without surveillance but considers learning a four-circle spell to defend against beasts, when suddenly a soft breeze rustles through the leaves and catches his attention, revealing a mysterious figure emerging from within the thick forest vegetation, formally introducing herself as Ruri, the loyal maid in service of Lord Valdrova, confirming the identity of the young noble before extending an official welcome, and inviting the young man to follow her down the path leading straight to the dragon's castle. The people of the Arkan Empire always bragged that nothing in the world could stop their nation's military might, but the truth was that the demonic lands in the east of the continent remained an uncontrollable nightmare crawling with monsters, and the one who truly held back the advancing hordes and dominated the front lines was the red dragon Valtrafava, making our protagonist feel it was deeply unfair to brand someone who protected humanity from so much disaster as an evil monster, since people made up vicious slanders claiming she was secretly raising a dark army, although not a single coward ever had the guts to say a word to the imposing beast's face. Seeing black wolves prowling around the area, the maid calmly tells the boy not to worry, reassuring him that no creature will dare attack as long as he is walking by her side, revealing that the walk on foot will take 2 hours to reach the castle, but mentioning that if she were flying alone it would only take 10 seconds flat, making it crystal clear to Furtive that this uniformed girl is definitely no ordinary human. Ruri is actually a high-ranked dragonkin who inherited the noble blood of the beast, hiding her horns and tail, prompting the young man to rest his walking staff on the ground to try and negotiate, asking if it would not be way better and faster for both of them to fly up to the peak together, only to receive a blunt response from the servant saying she simply does not want to carry him, creating an awkward mood in the middle of the woods with the boy shivering from exhaustion under his heavy luggage, and hearing the girl tell him to keep walking without rest because her master is already waiting, making our protagonist let out that awkward guilty grin of someone who is paying for all his sins on the climb. He realizes that marrying a dragon is not going to be an easy task at all as he stares up at the mountain summit, finally arriving at the castle's massive iron gates where the servant knocks firmly, announcing in a loud voice that the promised groom has just arrived at the residence, while Furtive feels his hands trembling under the overwhelming aura radiating from behind the doors, being told to stay put in the hallway while she goes to fetch the official message from Valdrova, with the maid shooting him a death glare to warn that someone of his low standing has no right to speak directly with the beast. A short while later, the servant returns looking completely formal to deliver the message sent by the Duke, projecting the majestic magical silhouette of Valdrova, who praises the young man's bravery for coming all this way, but coldly stating that she does not want a forced marriage and telling him to head back home, leaving the young man intrigued to see that he traveled all this way only to get turned down right at the door. In his first life he would have accepted the offer on the spot to save his own skin, but now he is a completely different man, who came to this dragon's lair out of his own free will, declaring that he has no intention of backing down and wants to see the engagement through to the very end, leaving the maid glaring at him with pure annoyance before heading off to report his answer to her master. Just a few moments later, the servant reappears holding a bag stuffed to the brim with shiny gold coins, dropping the fortune right at Ferda's feet and praising the young man's determination for coming of his own accord, offering all that massive wealth so he can leave and start a fresh new life far away from there. But our protagonist is not even slightly fazed by the pile of gold, stating he has zero interest in money or power, extending his hand with absolute conviction and deep respect to declare that his one and only true interest is his engagement to Archduchess Valdrova. Ruri lets out a long and impatient sigh at the boy's sheer stubbornness, throwing a devastating punch that cracks the stone floor to show her deep displeasure, pointing her finger and ordering the young man to turn right around immediately without wasting any more of her time, clarifying that this order comes from her own personal desire to protect her master from freeloaders, beginning to unleash razor-sharp claws and menacing horns sprouting straight from her head, revealing her imposing battle form wrapped inside a terrifying green aura, making our protagonist shield himself from the violent wind as he recognizes the legendary presence of Dragon Fear, while the girl charges forward in a fury, calling humans greedy scum who only want to exploit Valdrova, making Ferda finally understand the real reason why the third prince was eliminated back in the past. That fake prince had his head packed with dirty schemes to subjugate the dragon and steal her ultimate power, triggering the beast's wrath, who saw right through his shameless greed and obliterated him without hesitation, with the maid agreeing that the noble's own arrogance was his absolute downfall, pinning Ferda down against the floor and claiming she sees the exact same despicable ambition in him, asking with a voice filled with venom if he also plans on trying to deceive her master. But our boy simply stays completely calm and places his hand over his chest with pure sincerity, swearing before the servant without a single shadow of falsehood or selfish motive, affirming that he did not come here under coercion from others nor in search of profit or political gain, remembering how Valdrova handed over her very own heart to a selfish man in her final moments. Further raises his hands with firm conviction and promises to stand by her side this time as her legitimate fiancé. The young man reaffirms loud and clear that he came here solely to take up his role as Valdrova's groom, noting that since they are going to be husband and wife moving forward, it is only right they speak directly without middlemen, making the servant clench her claws in fury, thinking this human is an insolent brat who crossed the line, lunging straight at him, unable to stand a mere mortal spouting such nonsense in her presence, only to halt her strike mere millimeters from the young man's face, upon seeing he didn't even flinch in fear, deciding to pull back immediately to deliver the suitor's official message directly to her lady. She then focuses to faithfully relay every single word she heard from the young noble, kneeling down respectfully inside the dark sanctuary of the fortress, before the grand silhouette of the creature who stands among the legendary 12 rulers and personifies absolute power, making the sovereign in her human form wonder with deep curiosity if that was truly the case, admitting that she is quite intrigued to discover what kind of person would have the sheer guts to say that. Valdrova asks what impression the servant got from the boy along the path, and the girl holds nothing back, saying he seems like a pathetic human who nearly died of exhaustion during the hike, shamelessly making up that he is totally hideous and suggesting they kick him out immediately. But a boy stays locked and active, a scold and Ajib begrudgingly admitting the young man has a handsome face that turns heads, pouting off in the corner while her master clarifies that she was not asking about his looks. The maid then takes a deep sigh and confesses that the guy is quite out of the ordinary, explaining that since she is a high-rank dragonkin, any ordinary human would shake in terror before her presence. Yet that boy didn't show a single trace of fear even when she unleashed her crushing aura, which means he will be fully capable of looking into her master's own eyes without faltering. Hearing that, the gorgeous red dragon cannot hide a warm smile of pure relief and hope, calling it wonderful news while leaving the servant totally confused by all that excitement, since her secret dream had always been to find someone who could truly hold her gaze, feeding the sweet dream that she might finally be able to live with another person in a normal way, while Ruri gets startled hearing the word normal coming from the mouth of such a mighty beast, receiving the firm confirmation from her master who had already made up her mind. Returning to the castle hallway, the maid formally announces that Valdrova has agreed to proceed with the engagement, leading Ferda through the imposing corridors all the way to the guest room prepared for him, revealing a luxurious room kept in far better condition than the young man could have ever imagined, making our protagonist praise the cleanliness and ask if she is the only worker in this entire fortress, to which she coldly replies that she is indeed the only servant, making sure to address him strictly as a guest, reminding him that since they have not held the official ceremony yet, to her he is still just guest number one. The girl huffs in anger in the background, saying she hates humans, while the young man compares her to a protective guard dog, preferring to cut through the banter to ask directly when the engagement ceremony will actually take place. Being informed that the event is officially scheduled to happen exactly 1 month from now, gathering only the master, the maid, and the boy for a low-key celebration deep inside the lair. Ferda nods along and rests his hand on his chin to reflect on the timeline, thinking to himself that 1 month will be plenty of time for his plans. Catching the suspicious glare of the maid, who does not like that calm and easygoing attitude one bit, warning him straight up that nobody is handing him the title of fiancé on a silver platter and that this month is his window to prove his worth, pointing her finger firmly to demand that the partner of a great ruler must possess standing worthy of the title, requiring him to show real qualifications before the marriage if he truly wants to be accepted. The kid makes a funny face upon realizing that marrying a dragon takes way more work than it seems, asking whether that requirement came directly from Valdrova or if it is just something made up in her own head. And the servant admits the idea is hers because her lady has too soft of a heart and would let anything slide, telling the young man to prove that his weak and sickly body holds at least some kind of hidden potential, warning that if he cannot even manage that, he will never be recognized by the other rulers as the duke's partner. Ferda closes his eyes in silence to take in the warning, admiring in his thoughts how lucky his bride is to have someone so devoted by her side, realizing that even if the girl dislikes him, she only cares about her master's well-being and the dignity required for the role, remembering the sacrifice in the past and wondering why such a loyal servant was not present in that final moment. He then accepts the proposal and asks with dry sarcasm if he will need to become the emperor himself just to satisfy her, noting that the maid is basically demanding that he surpass the level of an ordinary human ruler, but smiling with complete ease as he agrees to the challenge set by the servant, which leaves the girl furious, unable to understand why this mortal is still acting so relaxed, screaming at him, asking if he lacks a brain or if he thinks dealing with dragons is child's play, to which our protagonist calmly reassures her that within 1 month he will show plenty of convincing results, leaving the maid intrigued, wondering what kind of secret power this human is relying on so heavily. Night falls over the towering fortress under the bright glow of the full moon, while the young man paces around the room acknowledging that his current body truly has zero magical ability, but he carries the unique experience of being the only living person who has ever reached the supreme peak of the 8th circle, feeling completely confident that he just needs to regain his past sensory flow to reawaken his power once again. For any mage, forming the first circle is the single most crucial step since it defines the entire flow of the mana circuit, with the traditional path being the blue circle achieved through calm meditation, which is slower yet extremely stable, while on the flip side lies the dangerous path of the red circle fueled by violent emotional storms, which grants immediate raw power but burns away one's sanity until turning them into a lunatic driven by pure hatred, knowing full well that if he followed his previous path of vengeance he would grow strong way faster, but clenching his jaw with resolve to reject that destructive path, choosing to walk his journey differently this time, to keep his heart unshakable. An entire week goes by with the sun shining bright over the castle spires, showing Ferda sitting cross-legged on the rug fully immersed in his mental training, gathering particles of blue energy between his hands as he strains his spiritual channels, only to watch the flow scatter away, and let out a heavy sigh at yet another failure, remembering that forming a blue circle takes 3 years and that with only 3 weeks left he will need a much better idea. Ruri walks into the room carrying a lunch tray and asks smugly if he is already prepared, mocking our main character by pointing out that nothing has changed in that weak body while serving up a bowl of stew, but Ferda simply eats with all the calm in the world, saying that results will come with persistence, even though he internally admits his lack of progress is real and that he needs a fresh approach to move forward, until a deafening boom violently rattles the entire castle structure, causing the boy to drop his spoon in shock while the maid explains that her master is currently suppressing monsters, revealing that Valdrova is at the border of the eastern demonic lands slaughtering every beast trying to push through. The young man gazes thoughtfully out the window upon hearing about the dragon's battle, and states without hesitation that he insists on seeing this fight with his own eyes, hearing the maid advise him that he shouldn't even dream of going out there, warning that the fragile mind of an ordinary human could never handle such a terrifying sight of carnage, sarcastically telling him he better stay safe if he doesn't want to wet his pants in pure horror before the ceremony. But the boy slams his hand on the table with resolve and rejects the cowardly advice, declaring that witnessing this is the duty of anyone intending to be her legitimate partner, Within moments, a supersonic trail rips through the skies above the mountain range, with the girl unfolding massive draconic wings and carrying the boy by his collar mid-air, landing firmly on the cliff edge with the sheer speed of teleportation, making our protagonist drop to his knees on the ground, with trembling legs from the intense flight, clutching his churning stomach while the maid tells him to quit looking at her and pay attention to the horizon, ordering him to lift his head and face the true battlefield right ahead. Furta looks up with his blue eyes wide in utter shock, coming face to face with a purple demonic mist blanketing the sky under suffocating pressure, feeling a chill run down his spine as he witnesses the sheer scale of that colossal clash, where gigantic serpents and ancient beasts writhe amidst the storm of miasma, crushing monstrous carapaces with earth-shattering blows, while the imposing red dragon swoops down from above in an explosion of hellish flames, making colossal two-headed monsters shriek in agony as they get surrounded by fire, getting torn to shreds by deadly claws that rip through their flesh with zero mercy, with razor-sharp fangs crushing the invaders in a visceral spectacle of pure destruction, until the sovereign raises her neck and channels a colossal surge of blazing energy in her throat, unleashing her legendary breath of fire that sweeps across the entire valley and turns the enemy army into ash. The scalding shockwave hits the cliff where the two are watching the massacre, while the beast lets loose a monstrous roar that reverberates across the entire horizon, crowning her victory atop a mountain of smoking corpses bathed in the glow of fire, making the young man clutch his head in agony as his brain vibrates from the sheer impact of the sound, collapsing to his knees before an absurd power that transcends every human limit. Recognizing the overwhelming might of the dragon's roar that paralyzes every living thing, as he tries to catch his breath trembling from head to toe before that divine wrath, hearing the maid mock him asking if he finally understands the madness of a human wanting to bond with a dragon, showing that this titanic and destructive beast is the true form of his future partner, Ruri watches the boy on the ground shaking from head to toe after the thunderous roar, thinking with disdain that she already knew a weak human couldn't stomach such a terrifying sight, explaining that the blood of a red dragon carries what mortals call a wicked essence, a savage and relentless bloodlust that simply cannot exist without destruction, warning that this violent instinct doesn't depend on her personality and that pure willpower alone won't be enough to endure it, making it crystal clear that dragons and humans can never become a real couple, hoping that this display will make her master give up on the pointless dream of living beside a mortal. But to the servant's complete surprise, a subtle smile begins to form on Furta's lips, as he looks up in awe and gives a sincere compliment saying he found everything absolutely magnificent, leaving the girl jaw-dropped, unable to understand how he was amazed instead of scared to death, totally baffled and cursing the young man in her thoughts as a brainless masochist. Night settles over the fortress walls, bringing a chilly breeze to the window, while our protagonist rests in bed feeling the heavy toll of the experience from earlier, his body completely battered from the spiritual pressure and the devastating roar, having been carried all the way back by the maid who bothered to toss him onto the sheets, finding it a miracle that his mind came out of that brutal trial intact without losing its sanity. He wonders why he insisted so hard on watching that battle, reliving every single moment of the fight he witnessed from the cliff, recalling the chills down his spine as he saw the fury of flames tearing through the dark, recognizing that it was terrifying beyond words, yet he still wants to keep looking at her, understanding that all that slaughter against the monsters at the edge of the world is simply the method the dragon found to protect what she loves with her own life, representing the lonely footsteps of a noble crimson knight who chose the path of sacrifice, finding that determination far too beautiful to be ignored by someone who also suffered so much. Just then the young man feels a sudden flutter quicken his pulse, bringing his hand to his chest in shock as scarlet sparks begin burning on his skin, trying to push back the red energy for fear of repeating the madness of the past that ruined his life, when a gentle drop of mana ripples like a calm lake across his mind, projecting the glowing silhouette of the warrior Valdrova before his very soul, stabilizing the circuit as he realizes this feeling does not stem from hatred or revenge, but rather from a pure and unfamiliar emotion he had never experienced before, deciding to focus completely on that sensation so he doesn't let the opportunity slip away, channeling all his inner power into the center of that luminous vortex, making the arcane sparks dance intensely around his arms, compressing and spinning the energy swirl with incredible speed, shaping the power until condensing it into the flawless form of his first magic circle, swearing to himself that this time he won't make the same mistakes and will forge a totally different destiny. The next morning, Ruri enters the room and nearly drops her food tray upon sensing the boy's aura, standing stunned as she notices he opened his mana circuit overnight despite being completely exhausted yesterday, while Ferda sips his coffee calmly, joking that he pulled it off because he is no ordinary human, forcing a reluctant confession from the maid that he has met the bare minimum requirements for the engagement, taking the chance to ask if there is a spot near the castle where he can practice his magic. Soon after, several training dummies and wooden targets are set up in the open field, with the servants sweeping the ground with a broom after prepping the whole area in record time, proudly announcing that she finished constructing the practice grounds requested by the boy, prompting our protagonist to clap and praise her insane efficiency for building an entire yard in half a day, while she finds it odd that he only asked for simple targets instead of expensive magical tools. Hearing the mage explain that he needs to practice efficient control so he doesn't waste energy for nothing, which sounds bizarre to the girl since to her it feels as natural as breathing, claiming that any other dragonkin would view that kind of training as totally primitive, arrogantly stating that since she was born with noble blood she has no need for such nonsense, making the young man sigh as he remembers that those born gifted never truly understand human effort. He walks toward the targets and jokingly asks if she wants to stick around watching someone practice breathing, closing his eyes and taking a firm stance in front of the training field, remembering that the foundation of control is the stability of blue magic, yet his energy is red, needing to stir his emotions to the peak without losing mental control to unlock the path to power, recalling that in the past it took 2 full years of blood and sweat to master condensing spheres, but now with all his accumulated experience, he can recreate the projectile in just 2 minutes, summoning a small and flawless crimson sphere floating right on the tip of his finger, leaving Rory in pure shock as she notices the sphere doesn't waste a single drop of mana. Ferda then conjures 2 more glowing red spheres around his hand with masterclass skill, making the orb spin in formation before giving the command to fire toward the targets, launching the mana shot spell like a beam of light that cuts straight through the wind, causing a booming blast that obliterates the wooden target into tiny specks of dust, smoothly commenting that the test was a success, while the maid nearly stumbles backward in shock, staring at the boy with a suspicious look packed with doubts about that extraordinary skill. Later on, the servant heads to the lair to report all of the boy's progress to the Archduchess, leaving Valdrova surprised to hear that her suitor awakened as a mage so quickly, with the maid warning that the boy's flawless execution makes him extremely suspicious and dangerous, arguing that no ordinary human could pull off such a feat without a single mistake and that he must be hiding something, to which her master smiles and counters that hearing so much praise from her servant only proves how remarkable he is, deciding to place her trust in the young man who came here with sincere intentions in his heart. Rory watches from the side, worried about the pain her lady previously endured at the hands of other humans, fearing she might be deceived once again now that she finally decided to open her heart to someone, until she gets a sudden idea to put the boy's true intentions to the test once and for all, suggesting they take this golden opportunity to hand that special task over to his care, making the beautiful ruler flash a subtle smile as she catches on to the maid's plan, while Ferda is formally announced, dressed in elegant crimson noble attire for his next appointment. At the round table of the Eastern Border Alliance, local nobles gather following the Archduchess's official summons, complaining about wasting time without knowing when monsters will strike, until they hear Valdrova's new fiancé is on his way, growing outraged upon learning that some idiot actually accepted the deal, thinking he will get a real marriage, mocking our 18-year-old protagonist for being just the defective son of House Raznova who can't even swing a sword, while the elderly leader at the head of the table calls for calm and says the kid isn't worth their attention, since Count Overa Concilius is certain the boy will soon be torn apart and devoured by the beast anyway. Just then the grand doors swing open with the formal announcement of Lord Ferdarosnova's arrival, showing our young man walking in with top-notch elegance alongside the maid Rory, remembering when he was peacefully reading in the library and got notified about the meeting, hearing the maid explain why Valdrova received the title of Archduchess of the Empire, knowing full well the dark history of the ancient beast that gave rise to the Demon King, the fearsome black dragon Godwin who was personally annihilated by Valdrova's fangs, conquering the eastern lands and earning imperial respect thanks to that legendary feat, being told that the lady only needs to focus on monster slaying at the border, leading the future consort to handle internal affairs and keep the regional lords in line, prompting the boy to joke that he basically became the castle's housewife, but accepting the challenge with a grin on his face to start asserting his authority. Back in the present, Ferda introduces himself before the council as the future consort of the duchy, asking with a sharp gaze how he should address each of the nobles present, leaving the entire room stunned by his commanding presence that establishes a hierarchy right off the bat, to which Count Olvera replies with a cynical smile saying they all live under the Duke's light, stating that it is natural to respect the suitor, but tossing a condition into the conversation, reminding him that the lords at this table swore loyalty to the empire before the boy was even born, hinting with the backing of the other lords that the consort should also show proper courtesy, hearing Ferda ask in a chilly tone if that is their final answer on whether they want to be treated with respect or as subordinates, staring down the leader with a dark glare so he gives a straight answer without dodging. The old man sneers and agrees they should be treated as subordinates just to close the matter, with our main character noting that each will manage their lands as they always have, whether ruling well or running extortions, making Lord Thessalos slam the table in rage after being accused of robbing his own citizens, to which Ferda raises his hand with a straight face, claiming it was merely a slip of the tongue. The noble grits his teeth thinking he now understands why the kid was thrown out by his own family, pointing his finger to humiliate the boy, saying a weak one circle mage is no match for his 4 circles. But our protagonist merely mutters with disdain, remarking that 4 circles is not half bad, leaving the man unhinged with rage over being looked down upon by an insignificant rookie, since in mage society hierarchy is decided by rank and a 4-circle mage is treated like a treasure, starting to channel lightning bolts in his hand, swearing to fix the brat's attitude once and for all, to which Ferda calmly raises his hand and makes an offer the opponent will love to hear, challenging the arrogant noble to an official duel to test the power of 1 circle against 4. The scene shifts to the arena courtyard where the clash between the 2 mages is announced, with the other lords whispering that the outcome is obvious, rooting for our boy to get an unforgettable beatdown, while Ruri stands by with arms crossed, waiting to see how the boy performs, leaving the 2 duelists face to face in the center of the arena under the audience's heavy tension. Ferda starts off by casually asking what type of magic his rival plans to cast, making Thessalos complain about the bad manners of demanding someone reveal their combat strategy, but cracking an arrogant grin thinking the kid is just trembling in fear of catching a beating, proudly announcing he will use the 4th circle magic burst spell to finish the match, leaving the watching lords terrified since it is a destructive spell that could kill the Duke's suitor. Ferda listens to the reveal and mentions that the only spell he knows how to cast is Mana Shot, drawing loud laughs from the villain who finds it impossible to lose to such a basic skill, to which the young man assures him he won't lose because he happens to understand magic quite well, infuriating the opponent who begins channeling all his mana with bloodlust in his eyes, manifesting a massive glowing magic circle to wipe the kid off the map for good, while Ferda senses the murderous intent and realizes his rival is also an uncontrolled red circle user, pitying the mediocrity of the spell before readying his own crimson projectiles. Thessalos suddenly widens his eyes as he feels the air warp right before him, watching the boy gather flawless spheres of pure destruction and declare the outcome already settled, sending a hail of red blasts raining down from above, forcing the noble to shield himself in desperation. Only the attack doesn't target the opponent's body, but rather the unfinished structure of his spell, landing direct hits on the magic circle's nodes which start cracking like glass under the pressure, severing the arcane lines with surgical precision to completely shut down the casting, causing the 4th circle spell to shatter into pieces mid-air right before the shocked noble, knocking Thessalos to his knees from the violent backlash of his own scattered mana, left terrified after witnessing the god-tier technique of dismantling magic circles that even he cannot perform. The noble's hand trembles against the stone floor as the dust settles across the arena, showing the man hunched over and wheezing without the strength to stay on his feet, unable to accept that a 4th circle mage just got utterly crushed by a 1-circle kid, while Ferda casually walks up to him and asks if he concedes defeat, prompting the rival to look up, overcome by deep admiration and newfound respect, confessing through tears that his greatest dream in life was always to grow stronger. Bowing down at our boy's feet and swearing to do anything to learn from such mastery, the spectators stand in absolute shock, unable to believe the outcome of that humiliating match, with one lord hinting the maid secretly helped, nearly losing his eyes after a terrifying threat from Ruri, while Ferda gently extends a hand to help the defeated man up, humbly praising his skill, moving the man to tears for having his worth recognized after being demoted from the capital years ago, catching our protagonist's attention, who asks for the man's name and hears the answer, Thessalos Vulture, dredging up forgotten memories from his past life as the young man recognizes the figure, revealing with a dark look that he knows him perfectly well since he was once his great benefactor, pointing his index finger right between the confused noble's eyes without giving him time to react. firing his mana shot at point-blank range with chilling coldness, blowing straight through Thessalos's head in a bloody instant kill, right before everyone, throwing all the watching nobles and Count Olvera into sheer panic over the sudden execution. As the lifeless body collapses at Ferda's feet, who doesn't even flinch at the spilled blood, declaring that he could not leave him alive because that man's very existence would make his bride sad. Pure silence falls over the arena as Thessalos's body bleeds out onto the stone floor, leaving everyone present speechless at witnessing the cold-blooded murder of a nobleman. With Count Olvera and the other lords sweating bullets and gulping hard at the scene, horrified that the duel was already over, yet the young man snuffed out a lord's life without hesitation, but not a single soul has the courage to step forward and challenge that killer gaze. Ferda walks calmly toward the nobles and asks why everyone froze up, telling them not to worry because that man deserved death for bringing sorrow to the Archduchess, making the Count question what the death of a newly met lord has to do with Valdrova's sorrow, to which the boy smiles with blood on his face, reminding them his bride fights so humanity can live happily, explaining that Thessalos went against that pure wish by plotting an unforgivable incident, though playfully admitting that betrayal would only happen in the distant future and is hard to prove now, throwing the nobles into a frenzy believing they are dealing with an unhinged lunatic, while our protagonist turns his back, warning that he doesn't care what the rest of the lords do from now on. Soon after, the carriage travels down the dirt road under the orange glow of dusk, showing our boy slumped over the seat, holding his head in severe nausea, feeling his head spin after spending every bit of his mana on that single blast, admitting he never expected to run into that dark mage so early in his new life. Feeling carsick from the carriage's bumps and missing magic cars that haven't even been invented yet, Rory takes the chance to drop some sharp chasm, praising the boy for killing their most loyal noble on their first meeting, confirming to the surprised boy that Thessalos was actually one of the few lords truly loyal to her lady, leading our protagonist to ask if that traitor was seen as an honest man by the locals, hearing the maid explain that he walked a fine line between being upright and corrupt just enough, to which Ferda insists the engagement will stand because he had every right to take the guy out, closing his eyes to recall the dark secrets hiding inside that castle, glancing down at the bundle on the seat where he stashed the noble's severed head, knowing for a fact that the Wolter estate is harboring a heinous crime in progress. Arriving at the Wolter castle, the elderly butler gives a warm bow to the duke's guests, mentioning his master is out until Ferda casually replies that his boss is already dead, tossing the bloody parcel straight into the servant's arms, who freezes up completely baffled, while Rory orders him to hang it on the front gate for everyone to see, causing the staff member to open the package and spiral into sheer despair upon recognizing his master's head, letting out a shriek of terror that echoes across the entire estate as night falls. Inside, the two stroll right into Thessalos's luxury bedroom like they are ransacking an abandoned house, with the maid tearing through furniture, hoping they find actual evidence to justify the noble's execution, until the boy crouches near the bed and notices a secret passageway beneath the floorboards, searching with his fingers for some switch or hidden mechanism to open the entrance, when the servant casually tells him to step out of the way, balling her fist with a menacing scowl overflowing with brute strength, and throwing a titanic punch that shatters the stone floor in an explosion of rubble, blasting the hole open and telling the boy to hurry down the ruined staircase. The two begin descending the dark steps leading into the mansion's abandoned basement, covering their noses with their hands from the unbearable stench of decay foul in the air, stumbling upon a horrifying secret lab packed with human corpses and monster remains, proving through marks of desecration that the Lord belonged to the demon worship cult, vile humans who cast aside their humanity to become necromancers and dark mages, stitching dead soldiers from his own fief together with monster organs to craft bizarre chimeras, sparking rage in Rory's draconic eyes, almost bursting with hatred for that psychopath, admitting that following demons is a crime so heinous it completely overshadows the murder of any noble, curiously asking how the young man knew about the existence of this bizarre hideout, while Ferda sifts through old manuscripts and breaks into a cold smile upon finding what he was looking for. He holds Thessalos's secret masterpiece, the legendary infinite mana cultivation method, recalling when the necromancer revealed in his past life that monsters generate mana endlessly, even though all that energy was impure and useless for conventional casting, explaining the theory of recreating that flow to produce unlimited pure mana, promising that this infinite source would allow one to break through any magic circle barrier, revealing his evil plot to raise an undead army and slaughter the nobles who demoted him, interrupted back then by Ferda, who pointed his finger to steal the research for his own revenge, executing the Dark Mage without mercy while thanking him for the stolen method. Our protagonist realizes that the very manual that helped him reach the 8th circle so fast is back in his hands, knowing that with this research he could reach the magical peak several times faster than before, with the maid sneering that lusting for such power proves he is just another greedy human, sarcastically noting that the golden chance every mortal dreams of just fell right into his lap. Yet Ferda closes his eyes firmly and states he will not keep that cursed knowledge, handing the papers to the girl and ordering her to destroy everything in the lab, leaving the servant speechless, unable to comprehend why a mage would throw away such immense wisdom. The young man explains that this research would change the world, but asks what good all that power would be, if chasing after this corrupt magic would only bring sorrow and suffering to his beloved Archduchess, looking into Rory's eyes and asking her to reduce everything to ashes immediately, to which the maid agrees, saying that burning it is the easiest request in the world, letting blue draconic flames erupt from her hand and swallow the cursed book in seconds, setting the entire underground chamber ablaze with purifying fire that consumes all traces of evil. Remembering that every spell carries the soul of its creator and Thessalos's magic was pure hatred for the Empire, fully aware that the man was a red circle user just as consumed by resentment as he once was, choosing to let go of that dark past even if he has to force his own mind to start over from scratch, leaving behind the man who only survived by clinging to hatred and revenge, letting out a sigh of relief as he watches the fire easily consume everything, while the maid glares at him from the side, thinking the boy is way too unpredictable of a psycho to be anywhere near her lady, turning her back to get out of that stuffy place before the stench of blood ruins her day, letting him know it is time to head back for the long-awaited engagement ceremony with Valdrova. The day of the highly anticipated engagement finally dawns over the towering castle of Archduchess Valdrova. Was our boy walking through the elegant hallways beside the maid while confirming he finished writing his vows, finding the idea of reading handwritten declarations quite a romantic touch from his bride, to which Rory huffs in disgust, saying that throwing a celebration in a place worse than a stable completely ruins her lady's prestige. Though deep down Ferda realizes the girl only acts this way because she genuinely wants her master to be happy, catching a deadly glare from the servant warning him not to dare wrinkle the formal clothes she just ironed. The young man takes advantage of the walk to ask how things are really looking across the territory after the last meeting, mentioning that none of those border lords seemed capable of fighting on the front lines against monsters, to which the girl confirms that the nobles gained autonomy and now only care about lining their own pockets with cash, crushing public unrest with military force to the point where a full-blown rebellion could explode at any second, making our protagonist think that a single direct order from the Archduchess would bring all those parasites to their knees in fear. But the servant warns him that he will soon understand why Valdrova chooses not to interfere in those matters. The heavy stone doors swing open to reveal the entrance to the sanctuary where the ceremony will take place, lighting up the rustic chamber with hundreds of golden candles burning across the cracked stone floor, with the maid instructing the boy to take a seat at the table and await the bride's arrival, solemnly announcing the official start of the engagement ritual before the massive iron gates, sending a burning and crushing pressure leaking through the cracks to slam straight into the boy's chest, sending chills down his spine as he spots the beast's giant claw and golden eye peeking through the opening of the door. Rory begins the sacred chants declaring the solemn union between mortal fragility and eternal life, raising the crystal bottle to weave a golden bond that not even the passing of time could ever sever, pouring the ceremonial brew so human weakness can wash away its fears in the face of the unknown, while Ferda raises the bowl with both hands and gulps down the magical liquid in one single shot, instantly noticing that the drink pushes away the dragon's overwhelming aura and soothes his senses, while the maid fills the opposite bowl to seal the guardian's immortality, only for the dragon's giant paw to tremble clumsily and flip the entire table straight onto the floor, spilling the sacred drink everywhere and forcing the maid to announce they will have to restart the whole ritual from scratch. Moments later, our boy is already blushing bright red from downing multiple extra rounds of the liquor, feeling completely dizzy since it is his first time tasting alcohol in this new life, nearly tumbling backward as the beast's giant claw knocks over the bowl yet again with a loud crash, causing a vein to pop on Rory's forehead from pure rage at this endless clown show, coldly asking to be excused before marching straight behind the iron gate to demand some answers, leaving the boy all alone slumped over the little table trying his best not to pass out drunk. Suddenly, a deafening scream echoes from behind the doors, making the boy open his eyes wide in pure shock, with the maid yelling furiously that her master was the one who insisted on marrying a mortal in the first place, screaming at the top of her lungs that she swallowed all her pride just to help make that dream come true, ranting that hiding away while her groom waits outside is completely shameless behavior, ordering the beast to come out properly to greet the boy and warning she will not forgive spilling another single drop, causing the door to creak open while Ferda stays sprawled out on the floor, dazed by all the drama, jokingly thinking that the maid's furious screech was a magnificent roar that almost rivaled a dragon's breath. Ruri sighs and sheepishly confesses that her master suffers from a severe phobia of humans, explaining that Valdrova avoids all contact with people and only leaves her lair to hunt monsters, leaving our protagonist completely stunned to learn that the legendary Archduchess is terrified of people, wondering how on earth they are supposed to carry on with the ceremony given that major issue. Just then, a heavy hand covered in thick metal armor plates pushes the iron gates open, revealing an imposing warrior clad in full crimson armor topped with sharp horns, walking forward with heavy metallic steps until sitting down respectfully across from the young man, making our protagonist take note of the massive build of this figure hiding her face behind a full helmet, thinking that outfit looks way more suited for a bloody battlefield than an engagement ceremony, while the maid resumes the ceremonial vows to seal the fate of the two betrothed. Pouring the bowl of liquor for the armored bride without any further incident, Valdrova gently brings her metal gauntlet up to her helmet, unlocking the visor to reveal soft lips and strands of crimson hair spilling out from the armor, causing Ferda's heart to race inside his chest with an unexpected flutter, as the warrior maiden sips the liquor with sheer elegance while keeping her eyes lowered in shyness, flashing a sweet and gentle smile that brightens up the room from beneath her helmet, leaving the boy's blue eyes completely mesmerized by that breathtaking sight, feeling every bit of his fear vanish upon realizing all the effort she put in just for a simple mortal. The maid clears her throat to cut through the romantic tension and orders them to start reading their personalized vows, making Ferda unfold his letter, knowing that generic words hold no meaning after everything he went through, declaring with a steady voice that even if she doesn't know him well, he knows her because she once gave him her heart, stating that through that very heart he witnessed every betrayal she endured while fulfilling her noble duty, noting that her compassion in embracing even those who hated her for no reason was what set him on the right path, making a solemn oath on his knees before the sovereign who listens intently, promising that just as she gave her own heart to him in the end, this time he will be the one offering his entire life and devotion to her as her king and her everything. The boy then lifts his gaze and adds that this part wasn't written on the paper, but that it is an absolute honor to be engaged to a woman as stunning as she is, leaving the bride blushing furiously red, while Vuri cringes in the background from pure secondhand embarrassment, trying to hand the floor over to her lady to read her vows next, only to watch Valdrova jump up in utter panic from the intense emotion, spinning around in a hurry as her metallic footsteps echo loudly through the chamber, marching straight back into her lair before anyone can say a single word, and slamming the massive iron doors right in their faces, leaving them totally speechless. The maid puts on a straight face and declares with a strained smile that the ceremony has concluded successfully, looking over at the young man who remains lost in thought before the locked gate, until Ferda asks for permission to isolate himself in closed-door training for 3 full days. Rory clasps her hands together in delight, believing her master orchestrated everything flawlessly, shouting through the door that her lady pulled off a master stroke to put that cocky groom in his place, cheering that the upper hand in the relationship is now entirely in her master's control, while absolute silence and hot steam seep out through the iron cracks, making the servants spot the discarded vow papers scattered across the floor and realize what is actually happening, revealing the giant dragon Valdrova curled up in the dark, covering her face in sheer embarrassment. Inside the lair, the guardian whines on the ground, saying she really wanted to read her vows to her partner too, to which the maid asks in confusion why she didn't just read them right in front of him. Hearing the great beast confess with her head down that she lost all her courage when the moment came, admitting all flushed that she couldn't look into those blue eyes and speak with a steady voice, remembering the groom's piercing gaze and that soft voice that seemed to pierce right through her armor, confessing that her mind went completely blank while staring at the handsome boy, whimpering in embarrassment amidst imaginary flower petals while Ruri stands speechless at how cheesy her lady has become. The maid then apologizes for bringing up a sensitive topic on such a festive day, warning that her lady must prepare herself right now for a possible heartbreak, explaining that Ferda is now the official fiancé who will rule the Eastern Territories in the duchy's name, reminding her that humans always corrupt themselves the moment they get power, just like the third prince did, causing the ruler to lower her gaze thoughtfully at the memory of that ancient betrayal, but fully understanding the genuine concern of her servant who only wants to shield her from more pain. The night shines under the glow of the full moon, a reminder that mortals are destined to fade away one day, while Ferda looks out at the landscape from his bedroom window, trying to calm his racing heart, exhaling slowly as it finally hits him that he is truly engaged to the legendary Valdrova, tossing himself onto the bed with the surreal feeling that he is living in a dream too good to be true, remembering that in his past life he was blinded by hatred with no room to feel anything other than resentment. But now the dragon's sweet smile from beneath her armor has completely changed everything inside his chest. Sitting up on the mattress to replay that wonderful memory in his mind once again, longing to cherish this brand new feeling for the rest of his life, when the red circle in his chest suddenly begins spinning wildly in response to that overwhelming emotion. A mana rampage threatens to destroy its wielder, but if properly channeled it turns into a prime chance for breakthrough, with the boy walking resolutely through the forest, knowing that reaching heights he has already conquered will not be difficult, recognizing that as a one-circle mage his energy reserves are still very limited. Yet his mental fortitude as a former archmage continues overflowing in abundance, spitting the mana whirlpool without wasting a single drop in the process, layering the energy until forging the second circle to stand one step closer to his bride. 3 days later, the maid stands dumbfounded upon noticing he broke through to the second circle in record time, praising his impressive growth rate as the two walk through the castle corridors, curiously asking if all red circle mages advance with such ridiculous speed, to which Ferda explains that it depends on the individual and that this type of magic carries a dangerous side effect, where every new circle demands an even greater emotional trigger than the last, causing the dominant emotion to fuse directly with the caster's soul, just like it did in his hate-filled past, when he wandered around seeking new targets to despise even after finishing his revenge. Rory then introduces the luxurious royal office where the young man will work, exercising the Duke's authority, leaving our protagonist touched upon seeing how every single detail in that room was thoughtfully prepared for a human, letting out a sigh of gratitude as he sits in the head chair of the study, fully ready to officially begin his duties as Valdreva's supreme regent. At present, the lands of the duchy were in a state of total neglect due to a severe lack of oversight. But ever since the public execution of Thessalos, the other nobles started walking on eggshells for fear of losing their lives, making the young man's job considerably easier thanks to the ruthless reputation he established, as he begins drafting official letters to send his very first warning to the regional lords, stating with a sharp gaze that he intends to keep frequent contact with every one of them from now on, warning in the documents that he will take charge of internal administration, telling them not to bother replying if they disagree. The next major crisis on the region's checklist is the monsters ravaging the local farmlands, creatures that contaminate the soil by their mere presence, driving thousands of peasants to their deaths. Since, while Valdrova blocks disaster-class beasts, it is impossible for one person to contain all the smaller monsters alone, leading our protagonist to recruit the finest talents across the kingdom to shoulder that responsibility, handing over a sheet with specific names for the maid to review his chosen candidates, who reads through the list suspiciously without recognizing a single one of those experts, complaining in annoyance about having to travel to another city in person to fetch the first recruit. The two travel to Escalrea, the legendary city of scholars crowned by a colossal ancient tree, with Ferda explaining that the chosen candidate is a hidden genius who has yet to reveal his true worth to the world, brushing off the servant's skepticism by assuring her that it took a very long time to gather that precious intel, keeping quiet about the fact that in the past, that recruitment list was actually his personal hit list where he jotted down every rival's weakness for revenge, looking back at that dark era when he was way too busy finding reasons to hate everyone alive, driven by an unhinged paranoia that he is now trying to turn into something genuinely useful. Sitting in the bustling plaza, they wonder how they are going to track the man down in such a massive crowd, until a street vendor catches their attention by shouting aloud and offering delicious sweets, advertising candied fruit skewers that are a massive hit among the local students, prompting our protagonist to strike up a conversation to ask if many graduates pass by that stall, following up by asking if the merchant happens to know the notoriously sloppy scholar of the area, leaving Rory scowling, thinking the boy wants to bring trash into the castle, while the vendor confirms the nickname, charging 5 coins for the skewers to jog his memory about the man's whereabouts, making the maid step right up with sparkling eyes to demand they take all 3 skewers at once. Ferda pays the agreed price, amused by the girl's sudden burst of excitement, as the merchant hands over the honey-glazed fruit skewers with a wide grin on his face, revealing gleaming treats of strawberry, kiwi, and tangerine ready to be devoured, leaving the maid in awe with her mouth wide open before that sugary temptation, quickly brushing off her embarrassment by claiming she only bought them to pay for the intel, making the boy smile upon realizing she has a cute and childish side whenever she gets sweets, munching happily on the fruits as they stroll down the stone-paved streets of the city, noticing the young man staring at her and freezing up with her mouth stuffed with strawberry, awkwardly offering him a bite right before the boy tells her she can go ahead and eat it all herself. Dusk begins settling over the alleys, urging them to hurry so they don't miss their timing, with the flame of a single candle flickering inside the dark room of an apartment building, where a loud crashing sound reveals a bespectacled young man sprawled across the floor amidst scattered papers, groaning in pain as he watches his life's research fly all over the place right as they arrive. Bernal Marquis entered the academy as the top student of his class, but graduated as the biggest troublemaker around, getting cornered right at the graduation ceremony by loan sharks who came to collect borrowed money with fake friendly pats on the back, asking with a sly smirk if it wasn't about time the boy paid back everything he owed, while the poor guy broke into a cold sweat, knowing that his only real asset in life was a mountain of debt. Back in the present, the debt collector smashes a glass vial on the floor, yelling to know when he will get his payment, complaining that he waited years for the kid to graduate and won't tolerate any more lame excuses, pinching his nose in disgust at the rotting stench of the monster carcass stored inside that stuffy room, hearing the scholar eagerly explain that his research recycles monster remains into pure mana stones. But the loan shark lights a cigar and asks bluntly if that useless work brings in any immediate cash, calling the kid naive for not understanding how the real business world operates, offering a chance to clear the entire debt if he scraps that project and pivots his focus, stating that crafting weapons makes mountains of gold, ordering the young man to use his brain to forge armaments. The thug then whips out a sharp pocket knife, leaving the researcher terrified and frantically trying to pitch another idea, slamming the blade deep into the wooden table to show his patience has officially run dry, warning that this is definitely not the time for a debtor to be picky about what he wants to do, making the scholar tremble from head to toe in pure fear of violence, yet yelling with all his might that he flat out refuses to build weapons of war, receiving a brutal kick straight to the face that sends him crashing across the floor, getting stomped on and beaten by the henchman while the leader tells him to drop dead if he won't cooperate, leaving the poor guy curled up in the corner watching his glasses shatter, thinking his life ends right here. Just then, a firm voice calls out from the doorway, ordering the loan sharks to end this clown show immediately, revealing Ferda and Rory stepping into the room after hearing the commotion of the beatdown from outside, calmly stating that he also has some pending business to discuss with that very scholar, prompting the collector to eye the boy's fancy clothes and ask if the deadbeat borrowed money from him too, to which our protagonist replies no, only to hear the thug tell him to wait his turn to beat the guy up, firing back with a cold glare that this will be quite a serious issue, since he needs that man's brain working in top shape, not his mouth, proposing to pay off the young man's entire debt on the spot to settle the matter right now. The loan shark bursts out laughing, stating that with interest the grand total comes to 72 gold coins, when the maid casually tosses a massive sack of golden coins right onto the center of the table, revealing a gleaming mini-fortune that leaves the criminals completely jaw-dropped, making the ringleader mock Burnell, saying he got insanely lucky to find such a filthy rich sponsor, reaching out with greedy hands to grab the cash and declare the debt settled, only to have his wrist gripped with monstrous strength by our main character, who coldly warns that the transaction isn't over yet and asks where he thinks he is putting his hands, making the villain try to yank his arm back in annoyance, confused by the sudden change of tone. Ferda points to the scholar's pathetic, battered state and says that since the merchandise was damaged they demand compensation, leaving the thug outraged as he struggles in panic, realizing the absurd physical strength of this young noble, hearing his own bones crack as the boy crushes his wrist without breaking a sweat, making the loan shark scream in agony as our boy hands things over to the maid to collect the rest of the bill. Ruri opens her sharp dragon eyes, unleashing a menacing green glow, slamming her crushing aura into the room and making all the henchmen drop to their knees paralyzed in terror, with the leader sweating bullets not knowing if this is sorcery or a demonic aura, while our protagonist gives them two options. Either they pay compensation for beating up Burnell, or they get the exact same beatdown delivered right back to them, noting that since they are money-hungry loan sharks, they will definitely choose to take the free beating without hesitation, with the maid cracking her knuckles with a dark grin to collect the compensation in punches, sending desperate screams and the sounds of breaking bones echoing across the entire neighborhood, showing the criminals limping and fleeing in tears while the maid dusts off her hands in pure satisfaction. The researcher gets up weeping in relief and thanks them from the bottom of his heart for saving him, adjusting his glasses to introduce himself as Bernal Marquis and ask for his savior's name, panicking and nearly tumbling backward upon hearing the boy declare he is Ferda Valdrova, slamming his forehead to the floor in a desperate bow for failing to recognize the Archduke consort, to which our protagonist tells him not to worry about formalities, since it was only natural he wouldn't know. The noble looks down at him and explains that he came all the way here solely for the recycling research, explaining that the eastern continent is crawling with monsters and desperately needs ways to utilize their carcasses, promising that if the scholar comes to the castle he will receive unconditional backing to develop his research, guaranteeing unlimited funding, rare materials, and full facilities with zero bureaucratic red tape, laying down only one single non-negotiable condition in exchange for this massive investment, requiring that the ultimate outcome of this project be the creation of military armaments for war. Hearing the word weapons, the scholar's eyes go wide and all his excitement evaporates on the spot, standing up to reject the offer, saying that weapons kill people and his true dream is to preserve peace, with Ferda looking at him with calm eyes, acknowledging the scholar's pacifist heart, but asking if he has any clue how many innocent lives a single monster claims in the Eastern Territories, reminding him that every 3 days, the Archduchess marches out alone to battle colossal abominations, beasts capable of wiping an entire metropolis like Escoria off the map in the blink of an eye, constantly fighting on the front lines and risking her very existence to protect ungrateful humans, while ignorant people enjoy their peaceful days pretending nothing is happening atop her sacrifice. The consort explains that he needs efficient weapons to lighten his bride's heavy burden on the front lines, revealing that this was the exact reason he came to hire the researcher everyone despised as head of research, holding out the official appointment letter for Bernal to take charge of the duchy's technology department, leaving the young man conflicted about staining his hands with the creation of wartime weaponry, although Ferda knows full well that in the future this very same man will wage war without hesitation to defend peace. The journey back continues down the road without having received a final answer from Bernal regarding the offer, with the maid asking if it is fine to leave the guy thinking it over, while our boy assures her that he will come after them, noticing that the girl really enjoyed human sweets, while she plays it off claiming she is just filling her stomach, asking right after who the next name on the list is, hearing that it belongs to someone from the Red-Eyed tribe. That legendary bloodline possessed the unique gift of dismantling magic circles, becoming the mortal enemies of all mages, leaving the servant stunned to learn that this race everyone assumed was extinct still has a survivor hiding out, confirming they have plenty of gold in the carriage to make a strategic pit stop in the city of Halim, giving the maid quite the shocked expression upon recognizing that famous name, revealing the sparkling metropolis of entertainment and gambling, where the boy reveals his next target is a gambler. Shortly after, they arrive at Halim's luxurious casino, brightly lit by golden chandeliers and packed with high nobles, running into a charming gambler surrounded by elite ladies while raking in a colossal mountain of chips at the table, leaving the other players slack-jawed at the absurd amount of wealth the guy is pulling in, causing the crowd to whisper that his winnings are equal to the entire yearly budget of a noble territory. As the smooth talker turns around upon sensing new customers approaching, watching the young consort and his maid walk up with confident strides straight to the card table, with Rory whispering that the guy has brown eyes, only for Ferda to assure her that he is the right man. The swindler introduces himself with a charming grin as Zed Swallow and invites our boy to a game of cards, kicking off the first few rounds of the 2 trade bets under the watchful eyes of the entire hall, celebrating our protagonist's win with a fake whimper to stroke the new opponent's ego, flirting with the noble lady beside him and asking for her cheers to turn his luck around in the game, while Ferda sees right through the act, knowing he is just playing dumb to win the wealthy noblewoman's favor, using smooth talk and good looks as a shining trophy in this money-driven playground, knowing the guy slips away like a crafty rabbit the second he catches wind of any danger, deciding it is high time to cut off all of that trickster's escape routes. The dealer deals out the deck while praising the young noble's great performance in the round, to which Ferda remarks that there won't be a next time since he doesn't want his companion viewing him as a gambling addict, making his rival laugh and ask why on earth he even bothered coming in here, when the boy lets out a calm breath and stares deep into the man's eyes, announcing clearly for the entire table to hear that he is also looking for young Amelia, wiping the smile clean off the swindler's face, who freezes with cards in hand upon hearing that name, shifting his expression to murderous hatred as he asks who he thinks he is talking to. Without wasting a beat, our protagonist pushes forward a monumental stack of golden chips and calls all in on the table, sending the onlookers into a frenzy upon watching a newcomer bet his entire fortune against the undefeated Zed, pushing the trickster to accept the challenge, claiming he must win this round no matter what, with Ferda revealing an incredible hand of cards to match his opponent's wager, only for his rival to slap down a flawless hand and coldly order the two to follow him to the back, showing his scarlet iris glowing beneath the disguise as he states they have a lot to talk about. Inside the private lounge, the man sits down with a bottle of rum and demands to know how he knows Amelia, slamming the table and furiously asking if the boy is working for the thugs who kidnapped his sister, to which Ferda denies any connection and points out that his playboy gambler persona is nothing more than a facade, explaining that despite having the skill to bankrupt the casino, he only flatters the nobility for one desperate reason, which is to gain connections and clues to track down his missing little sister. The Swallow siblings suffered horrors their entire lives purely for belonging to the red-eyed bloodline, hunted down by mages who wanted to wipe them out and anti-magic factions eager to exploit their power, forcing the young man to infiltrate high society to hide his identity and seek influential allies, even though to the arrogant nobles he was never anything more than a petty disposable toy, with Ferda warning him that no matter how much money he stacks up, he will never get real results among these people, leaving the young man clutching his head in desperation, not knowing what else to do to save the only family he has left. The consort then folds his hands and calmly mentions that there is an honorable way out of his problem, introducing himself as Ferda Valdrova and offering him the official position of his personal assistant, making the gambler widen his eyes in shock, highly suspicious of the dragon groom's proposal, while Ruri brings forward the appointment scroll to prove the legitimacy of the offer, guaranteeing him high standing in society along with every single resource needed to find Amelia, making the young man realize that such a golden opportunity is rare, though he still fears a backstab. Zed admits the offer is tempting, but sets down his own terms before accepting, demanding first a salary worthy of the duty since he urgently needs funds, and warning secondly that if the noble has any shady motives regarding his eyes, he will walk away instantly, agreeing to seal the contract as long as the consort respects all his demands without playing games. Ferda accepts both demands on the spot, but adds a crucial third term to the agreement, stating that the contract will only last until they find the girl, leaving him completely free to leave afterward, leaving the young man slack-jawed, unable to grasp such immense generosity from a ruler, asking if he has any plans to enslave him, and hearing that the consort does not trade in human beings, questioning whether the mage fears keeping a natural enemy nearby who can nullify his magic. To which Ferda scoffs, saying that a mage who fears the red-eyed tribe should not even call himself a mage, mentally recalling that in the future this very same guy will become a phantom thief impossible to catch. Zed slams his glass on the table, finding this noble completely unconventional, raising his drink with a relieved smile and accepting the offer to become the duchy's newest henchman, excitedly asking what grand first mission the consort will order him to do, only to spit all the rum out of his nose when Ferda simply tells him to go seduce a woman, leaving the young man shocked while our boy jokes that this should be child's play for an experienced ladies' man, revealing the eerie forest cottage where he needs to bring back a certain woman living isolated from the world. Crows fly over the dark woods as the three approach the secluded cabin nestled among the gloomy trees, with the recruit finding it bizarre that their mysterious destination happens to be an abandoned witch's house, complaining that messing with witches always brings terrible bad luck to anyone who crosses their path, asking how much he will get paid for this commission, and hearing that the consort already paid the fee in advance, remembering that all that fortune gambled away at the casino table was the exact fund reserved for this job from the start. To which the gambler tries to haggle, saying he won that gold through pure skill, so this service should be paid separately, changing his mind on the spot and agreeing to do it for free upon seeing the maid release a terrifying killer aura. The swindler clears his throat to hide his panic upon realizing that his first task is a seduction mission, flipping his hair back with smug confidence and assuring them that winning women over is his greatest specialty, marching straight to the cabin door, while Ferda and Ruri watch the young man step inside the residence, prompting the maid to ask with concern if the boy does not risk coming out of there in a wooden box, warning that sending an unsuspecting man into the house of a Phileas lineage sorceress is practically begging to die, since nobody has ever managed to escape alive from the clutches of that sinister clan. Phileas witches are born from the red circle driven by pure hatred and hold a deadly contempt for all men, But our protagonist reassures the servant by revealing that Echidna was cast out and branded a heretic by her own clan, explaining that the exact reason for her exile was what made recruiting her such an easy task, when suddenly the door slowly creaks open and Zed's trembling voice calls for the consort at the entrance, showing the young man with a forced awkward smile saying she agreed to do whatever he asked just by looking at his face, revealing the young witch Echidna clinging to his waist, drooling with love over that handsome guy, having the purest and most obsessive fixation on pretty faces as the sole reason for her heresy. The girl is totally starstruck seeing another handsome young man and a cute maiden standing at her front door, introducing herself all blushy and smiling as the sweet Echidna before the visitors. Unable to believe her luck in receiving attractive knights and a gorgeous lady at such a humble cottage, giggling euphorically and almost passing out from sheer happiness at that divine sight, while Ferda walks straight into the living room and decides to cut right to the chase, asking about the rumor that she's been building a special golem and leaving the witch terrified, requesting to take a look at the creation and hearing the girl refuse saying the project is top secret. The consort stands up, pretending to leave, making the sorceress panic so she does not lose her guests, since she could not bear the pain of seeing such beautiful people turn their backs on her after so much loneliness, swallowing her pride and giving in to the pressure just to keep everyone around, opening the creaky wooden closet doors to reveal her ultimate masterpiece, unveiling a mannequin statue striking the model pose amidst sparkling rose petals, with a painted face full of dashing features and fake eyelashes shining on the polished wood, proudly announcing that she is in the middle of creating her personal concept of ultimate beauty. The wooden creature takes mechanical steps across the room and approaches its master with elegance, leaning forward to look closely into the sorceress's eyes with rehearsed charm, drawing passionate sighs from its owner, while the group watches that bizarre scene in complete silence, with Rory having no clue what on earth that wooden doll just did. Hearing the girl explain that the golem was merely reading her current mood, being fully capable of analyzing the user's emotional state on its own, walking over to the shelves to pick the perfect jar of tea for the occasion, the servant is left dumbfounded noticing that a mere wooden puppet has learning capabilities and a will of its own, while the witch celebrates receiving top-shelf tea because she is beaming with pure joy today, prompting the maid to whisper to Ferda asking if he knew from the start that this woman was a genius, revealing that she is a rune crafter, an artisan so legendary that there are not even 10 of them on the entire continent, while ordinary mages merely combine arcane symbols that already exist in nature. A rune master creates her own original strokes to give life to brand new magic never seen before, making the servant ask how someone with such a divine gift ended up making wooden dolls, to which Echidna reveals that she awakened her red circle through a burning desire for handsome men, venting that she always dreamed of getting a perfect boyfriend but could never attract anyone, sending Zed into a panic as she mentions that other witches impaled living humans or turned them into mindless puppets, but since she found that way too uncomfortable she preferred using her runes to craft a wooden partner instead. Ferda clutches his head in disbelief realizing she used a rune creation that even he had not mastered just to dull the boyfriend, yet seeing a brilliant potential in that unique talent and declaring the discussion wrapped up, holding out the appointment scroll to officially make her the territory's second head of research, inviting the mage to move into Valdrova's castle to continue her experiments with full backing, making the witch's eyes turn into glowing hearts as she spots Zed winking right beside her, loudly promising under total hypnosis that she will follow this group to the ends of the earth. The consort walks over to the carriage pleased with having gathered the essential experts for the duchy's future, combining the genius magical engineering developed by Burnell with the innovative army of autonomous golems forged by Echidna, firmly confident that the research of these two eccentric geniuses will be the ultimate key to wiping out all monster hordes from the eastern border for good. Zed celebrates the success of the mission, waving farewell to the dark forest, while the sorceress packs her things, with the young man asking if she has already finished packing up her belongings in the cottage. Hearing the girl say she stored everything using fifth circle spatial storage magic, prompting our protagonist to decide to keep eye drops ready for the witch to keep her madness in check, ordering Zed and Echidna to head out on their own straight to Valdrova's castle, leaving the assistant terrified to learn that his boss plans to spend the night there and return only tomorrow, begging to tag along with his master so he does not end up trapped alone with that crazy woman, while the witch drools with excitement knowing the handsome hunk will travel alone with her in the carriage, letting out sinister giggles right behind the young man who weeps in desperation, begging to be saved. The next day the sun illuminates a lovely coastal village surrounded by lush green mountains, where Ferda pulls out his list of 4 names to check the final genius to be found, with the maid finally recognizing a famous figure upon reading the name Hellas, the legendary sage of water capable of seeing through the essence of all things with his peerless wisdom, who rejected high-ranking positions and endless fortunes from the Arkan Empire to live as an ambitionless hermit, prompting the servant to wonder how they will ever convince someone immune to both money and power, to which the boy coldly responds that he does not have the slightest interest in the Sage of Water, clarifying that this renowned old man is merely a middleman in the grand scheme of things, since the real person he came to find by that river does not possess a name at all. The scene opens on a quiet watermill surrounded by riverside greenery, where a soaked rag is violently hurled right into the face of a young blonde girl, with the lady of the house screaming furiously, wanting to know when she plans to finish doing the laundry, ordering her to beat the fabric, wring it out, and toss it straight into the water without slacking off, pounding her own chest in pure frustration over having to teach such a slow girl every single day, until she turns around and jumps in surprise upon spotting two noble figures watching in silence. The woman stammers in terror before Ferda, who asks if there is some kind of problem going on here, apologizing for the pathetic scene and making excuses that she was merely disciplining her mindless servant, claiming that strict punishment is the only method to make that creature understand anything, to which the consort calmly counters by asking if her instructions were not poorly phrased from the start. He explains that the woman ordered her to beat, wring, and place, but never told her where to place the garment, leaving the girl with empty blue eyes totally lost on what next step to take, tossing the cloth right back into the water to restart the cycle exactly as she was programmed to do, drawing another hysterical scolding from the mistress, who smacks the girl's back demanding common sense, while Ferda watches the abuse with calculated coldness in his eyes. The young man steps closer, saying that the woman's biggest mistake is viewing that child as a human being, stating that things would make far more sense if she treated her purely as a tool, since expecting independent reasoning from an inanimate object is asking for the impossible. Hearing the woman complain that she only kept the girl because her former master left her in her care, prompting the consort to immediately offer to buy the young girl and take her with him. The mistress hesitates, recalling that the girl was brought by the sage himself, but Ferda reminds her of his authority, telling the peasant woman to reflect deeply on the true nature of that shelter, questioning whether the man brought that child to that humble home out of pure charity, or if in truth his heart was completely devoid of compassion, making the woman tremble in fear as she begins to grasp the warning behind those words. Ferda reminds her that her master attained continental renown under the title of Sage of Water, and that the brighter a leader's standing is, the more visible even the smallest flaw becomes, hinging that this child is precisely the secret stain he needed to conceal from the world, leaving it to a loyal servant to bury the shameful tracks of her master before they ever came to light, locking the truth away under heavy guard so the old man's spotless reputation would remain untouched. The peasant woman is left reeling from the revelation, not knowing what to do, faced with that dilemma, when the noble tells her to hold out her hands without wasting any more time, pouring out sparkling golden coins worth a whole lifetime of hard labor, leaving the woman mesmerized by the astronomical sum she never even dreamed of holding, flashing a greedy grin and excitedly asking how she should proceed from here on out. The boy explains that all language holds power and that a single word from her will be enough, making the woman kneel before the young blonde girl to transfer ownership of the servant, gripping the child's shoulders and firmly commanding her to discard her former name, turning her body toward the noble who waits patiently, declaring that from this moment forward her new absolute master will be that young man. Ferda looks into the girl's eyes, asking if she acknowledges him as her new master, and receives a timid nod, confirming the transaction while the peasant woman rubs the gold coin against her chest, grinning ear to ear, to which the young man decides to share quite an interesting fact before departing, asking if she truly believed the sage discarded the girl simply because she was a brainless mute, revealing that Hellas is actually a man consumed by the purest greed, who despite putting on a saintly front is capable of any atrocity to obtain power. He explains that the sage did not leave the girl there to be cared for, but rather to keep her hidden from the world, revealing that the source of all that archmage's clairvoyance and genius comes exclusively from this little girl, since that small head holds more books than all of Escoria because she is the archive of all things itself. The consort points out that there are various ways to attain supreme knowledge, whether by seeking new information through books, unearthing long-forgotten arcane techniques, praying for the wisdom of the gods themselves, or taking the forbidden step of intruding into the realm of divine secrets, where an individual gains earth-shattering power at a devastating cost, which is completely losing one's own consciousness and sense of self. turning into the ultimate tool of wisdom that cannot think for itself. The legendary slave sage. The woman enters full panic mode, discovering the macabre truth behind the child raised under her care, desperately trying to return the gold to cancel the deal and avoid crossing the sage. To which Ferda warns that even if she gives the girl back, she will never make it out of this village alive, since she now knows the Archmage's filthiest secret and will pay with her life for that truth, advising the peasant to take that gold and flee as far as possible before she gets hunted down, leaving the woman trembling in absolute terror on the floor, knowing she will be erased without a trace if caught. Walking along the riverbank, Ferda asks Ruri if she believes in sudden human enlightenment, hearing the servant reply that she does because mortals possess a brilliant spark that shines in moments of crisis. Although the maid concludes that the famous Sage of Water is nothing more than a fraudulent scarecrow with zero true merit. Looking at the emotionless little girl following them and noticing the heavy toll paid to access the archive of all things, the servant remarks that throwing away one's own soul in exchange for power is an utterly foolish choice, making our protagonist shudder and agree with a bitter smile as he recalls his own past life, untying the scarf from the girl's head to let her long golden hair flow freely in the wind, asking her to look into his eyes while taking a noble and solemn stance, letting her know that before giving her a name he will engrave her highest priority command, an order that will become her very breath and beat in rhythm with her heartbeat, turning into an absolute and unchangeable truth for the rest of her existence. He evokes the grand presence of Archduchess Valdrova, the supreme ruler and Red Dragon, declaring that the Guardian will be the beginning and the end of everything she is from now on, ordering the girl to dedicate every second of her life exclusively to the benefit of her lady, establishing that he will issue orders as regent, but granting her permission to oppose him should he ever go against Valdrova's principles, and warning that if in the end she cannot understand the reasons behind his actions, she has official permission to rebel against him to protect the Archduchess. Ferda extends his hand and asks if she has engraved every word onto her soul, receiving a firm nod from the child, smiling with satisfaction and granting her the beautiful name of Mori. And if you enjoyed the story so far, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel to catch the next part.